happens when the world peace itself becomes political currency? This is the interview where we go beyond the headlines and try to uncover what's really going on. Today, we're analyzing the newly announced Israel-Hamas accord, a deal brokered under extraordinary pressure and framed as historic, to question not just what was agreed to, but why. Because beneath the ceasefire clauses and prisoner exchanges lies something deeper: the struggle over narrative, legitimacy, and the language that defines justice. Former FBI Special Agent Ken Gray joins me now to talk about this. What is your top line takeaway, Ken?
So as you said at the beginning, this is a historic situation here, that they will finally have peace after 2 years of war there in the Gaza Strip, at least the beginning of peace. Whether this actually goes all the way through or not is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I wonder why it took this long. What was the turning point for you?
So I think that the fact that President Trump has a big difference. There is not a lot of difference between the negotiated ceasefire elements and where we stand now. But the fact that President Trump has personally made it his personal mission to deliver peace to this area makes all the difference in the world. The fact that he is going to be there to see this actual agreement go into effect makes big difference.
Let's talk about the prisoner exchanges. The idea is that Israel is going to get back all the hostages, living and dead, and then Hamas has said that it's going to take a little bit additional time here to find all of the bodies that are allegedly scattered across Gaza. That is a first step, but it is in some ways, and I know this is very important for the family members, of course, who've been waiting for these hostages to be returned. But at the same time, there is more to be discussed and agreed upon, namely territory. And there is an open question of what the territory of Israel will look like and whether or not there will be a two-state solution. I don't want to minimize the hostage return, but ultimately lasting peace has to hinge on whatever territory is agreed to for Israel and subsequently for Palestinians. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So the hostages exchanged is 20 living hostages and 28 bodies, the remains of the deceased Israelis, in exchange for 250 Palestinian convicted prisoners, 1,700 Palestinians detained during the conflict here, and 360 bodies of militants. And so, of course, it's a very, very great difference here in the numbers. But nonetheless, this is getting back the Israeli hostages and the remains that it has become such a thorn in the side of Netanyahu and has been such a real issue of contention there in Israel. But as you say, there are a lot of other elements in this agreement that we need to see followed through. One such thing is the Israelis moving back to agreed upon lines and then moving totally out of the Gaza Strip. Another thing is that the eventual possibility, but not guarantee, of Palestinian self-rule and potentially recognizing the Palestinian state as a recognized country. A couple of things have to come into play for that. One is the retraining, the rehabilitation of the Palestinian Authority, which really does not have the ability to rule over this area.
Yeah, part of the deal, from what we're understanding, is that Hamas won't be involved at all, and neither will what has previously been described as the Palestinian Authority. These are supposed to be now technocrats, maybe even from some other Arab state that will be a part of like a governing board to oversee what would be Palestine. Who do you think will take the helm?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Is that in reality there is no power in Palestine other than Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. There, they are the ones with the weapons, and they are supposed to give up their weapons and give up power. But I doubt very seriously if that will actually happen. And consequently, there is nobody that is in a position of authority, nobody in a position that is not part of Hamas that has the ability to step up and take on that role. So that's going to be a problem. Additionally, the other problem is that as part of this agreement is that there's going to be an international body that comes in here and provides security for the Gaza Strip. That is, the United States has already said that they would put 200 military members within the Gaza Strip. That's not very many for this entire strip here. And so there's going to have to be other forces from other surrounding countries, an international force that will maintain security in the Gaza Strip while they are attempting to put this all together.
What about the proxies? We've talked about Hezbollah, based mostly in Lebanon. There are Iraqi militias. There is the Houthis. Now, some of these terror organizations have been, according to a lot of the data we're getting, have been decimated or significantly diminished in their power to exert control in the region, but they still exist. And every time one organization seems to go away or be dismantled, or the leaders are killed or captured, we see other terrorist organizations pop up. So what's the state of the kind of third-party war here, and to what extent are these proxies still operating with an operational Iran? We can't forget about Iran, despite the bombing of nuclear facilities there. They still have the capability to sponsor terrorism. How does that factor in?
So Iran is the puppet master. They are the one that is pulling the strings behind these proxy forces. As you pointed out, Hezbollah has been decimated with the pager campaign, but nonetheless, Hezbollah has been in the process of trying to get back on their feet and may very well become a force once again. There are both Syrian factions. Syria is right there, ready to get back involved. The leader, the so-called president right now of Syria, was a member of Al-Qaeda before he supposedly left Al-Qaeda. And they have other Islamic forces inside Syria that has been fighting alongside the Syrian government, the so-called Syrian government. The Houthis are still probably the strongest proxy at the moment, in that they continue to operate their campaigns against shipping in the area, but they are far enough away that they have little effect in Israel itself. Instead, they are still a menace to any type of shipping going on in the area, and so they remain a force to be considered. And the Iraqi militias are additionally out there. Another player that has not been mentioned is that of Turkey. Turkey has backed some of these other factions, and Turkey has been part of the group that has come up with this agreement. It was Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey that worked with the United States and Israel and Hamas. And so Turkey is another player, as yet not completely clear what their position in this will be.
Yeah, I heard Lindsey Graham on Meet the Press this morning saying that if any entity, not necessarily Hamas, but any entity at all, wanted to reclaim the West Bank, that all bets are off, that would be basically an intimation for further war. Do you agree with that? And is that something that you think realistically Hamas or any other group that wants to represent the Palestinians might try to undertake?
So the West Bank has continued to be a potential hot spot there in the area. There are Israelis that would like to move into the West Bank, and that will cause a major problem if they continue efforts towards that. And of course, the Palestinians that are currently in the West Bank some of which have been wanting to get involved in the conflict there, they continue being a potential problem. And if any other forces decide to get involved in the West Bank, especially from, say, Syria or Jordan for that matter, all bets are off. So West Bank will potentially become the next area of focus for potential conflict in this area if the Gaza Strip is settling down at this point. But I go back to the point that while the hostage exchange for the prisoners may happen, there are still some points here of the 20-point plan that is less likely to happen. Hamas is not very likely to give up their weapons willingly. What's built into the 20-point plan is that those Hamas members that are willing to lay down their arms and agree to coexistence, they can do so and remain here. Any Hamas members that does not want to lay down their arms are able to leave the country and be given safe passage out of the country to a receiving country, to a country agreeing to take a Hamas member like that. But I don't know of any countries in this area that are willing to take on Hamas members that are not willing to find peace at this point.
And what about the future of the Golan Heights?
Yeah, that's another area where I think Israel wants to hold on to the Golan Heights. It gives them the advantage of having a ready-made barrier between that and Syria. And so Golan Heights, they hold it and are not going to willingly give it up.
Yeah, I wonder if you believe this is indeed a peace deal. And I know that might seem like a question that undermines the framework of all of this, but we've seen peace deals a number of times in the Middle East. Do the elements of the framework that you've seen thus far seem to suggest a lasting peace is possible with this particular deal?
So in my opinion, I think this is closer to a ceasefire, that we are seeing the same elements that was in the ceasefire agreement before. And with the exchange of the hostages and the return of the flow of aid into this area, that is likely to happen. There are a number of Palestinians that are making their way back up towards Gaza City. Most of Gaza is rubble. There's 2.1 million people in the Gaza Strip. 1.5 million of them are currently housed in tents or will be housed in tents. And so this is an area that has been decimated and will take years to actually rebuild the Gaza Strip. And that would require peace to return to this area and investment by the countries in the region to help rebuild Gaza. And the real problem here, the thorn in the side, is that Hamas is not likely to give up their power. Hamas needs to more or less surrender, and Hamas does not want to surrender. In reality, I've said this before, and I believe I've said it on your show before, that if at the end of the day Hamas continues to exist after everything is said and done, then Hamas has won. That is, October 7th will end up in the long run being a success for Hamas if this peace plan moves forward and Hamas continues to exist. That's why Prime Minister Netanyahu wanted to totally decimate Hamas, to get rid of Hamas, to remove them as a potential threat against Israel at some time in the future. If they have time and the ability to rebuild and to rearm, they're going to launch another attack sometime in the future. And so the likelihood of this plan actually working out for a long-term peace in this area is somewhat doubtful.
Oh, wow. All right. There's a lot of people who are very disquieted by your conclusion that long-term peace isn't possible. What about the Rafah border crossing collaboration with Egypt, Sinai, and then, to the north, Lebanon and Syria? It's going to require a decent amount of collaboration there, and yet we know that Lebanon is a state sponsor of terrorism. How do you see that working out? And the Rafah border crossing is going to be key here, especially in the rebuilding of Gaza, and control over that and negotiations with Egypt could go well. They may not, and the future of Gaza may hinge literally on that crossing.
One of the earlier points in the 20-point plan is the reopening of the two-way traffic through Rafah and other border crossings. And so it is. That's one of the early conditions that the opening of those border crossings into the Gaza Strip. It's necessary to get both aid in, to get and to also to facilitate trade with Gaza Strip. That's going to be another key part of this, is trying to get Gaza to be an economic zone, being able to conduct trade, as well as recipient of humanitarian aid. And so, again, a key factor in this is getting those border crossing points open. Israel has got to feel secure for this to work out. And, October 7th showed that Israel was complacent in their security. And so I don't see Israel going to willingly give up the possible security and allow free flow of traffic through those security points.
What about collaboration between the Gulf Arab states? Who's the most central figure, do you think? Qatar was clearly very influential in helping to bring this conflict to a close. As we just mentioned, Egypt's going to be very important in negotiations over the Rafah border crossing, and maintaining that two-way traffic is maintained. But the other Arab states certainly have a role to play. Who else do you believe is central? Is there a particular sovereign nation that you think is key to maintaining peace here?
President Trump, after he goes and addresses the Knesset, is going to then travel to Egypt, to Sharm el-Sheikh, where he will be meeting with heads of the Arab states and other world leaders. And so we will potentially see who are the major players in the future of Gaza during that meeting. I think Saudi Arabia is going to be a key player for the overall peace to move forward. They were about to sign off on the Abraham Accords. I think that they will be a major player. But remember, most of the goods going into the Gaza Strip will flow through Egypt. And so I think Egypt is going to be a major player also. Qatar was one of the negotiators in this deal. But I think that Egypt, because of their proximity, will be key.
What about the rebuild? I want to hone in on who you think will take control of rebuilding Gaza. There have been discussions at some point. The president at one point said that he would be someone who could come in and help build, and the Trump Industries would be do some work, could potentially do some critical work here of reinstituting the infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying that's off the table, but what do you think will happen? And because there buildings need to be rebuilt, hospitals need to be rebuilt, schools, neighborhoods, basic infrastructure, roads, all of these things. What happens there?
Yeah. President Trump did say that he could redevelop the whole area and turn it into a playground for the whole Middle East there. Remember, before becoming a political figure, President Trump was a builder. He built a lot of buildings all around the world, a lot of golf courses all around the world, and he sounded like he was chomping at the bit to be able to get involved in the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. But nonetheless, this is a strip within the Middle East here. I'm sure that there are a lot of Arab partners that will view this as a chance to move in there and make money off of it. So I would not be surprised if surrounding countries will eventually get on board with the reconstruction of the Gaza Strip. But as you point out, the Gaza Strip is rubble. Most of the buildings have been destroyed or damaged. most of the infrastructure has been destroyed or damaged. And this is going to be a process that will take years to decades to rebuild.
The United Nations also will have some say in what happens here, I suspect, although many international players have said that the United Nations has been rendered basically ineffective here, and that it's really a diplomacy spectacle rather than an agency that's doing anything substantive in these negotiations. Is that a fair assessment, do you think?
I do indeed. I think that really anything that happens in this area is going to take President Trump to lead, and that's why he is there. He'll be there in Israel tomorrow, and he will then move from there to a meeting in Egypt. And so I think that really the United States will lead in this area. But again, I did mention Turkey before. Turkey has the ability to become a major force in this area other than the ones we've already talked about.
What's your best bet on whether or not Hamas will disarm? There's already some intel coming out that Hamas has said, leaders in Hamas, that they will never fully agree to disarmament. That's not really on the table, that they need weapons to be able to defend themselves. Will Hamas disarm fully? And if it doesn't, are we looking at more war?
That's why I think this is closer to a ceasefire than it is a long-term peace plan, because I don't see Hamas willingly laying down their arms. You know, there have been civil wars elsewhere in the world that people have laid down their weapons and have made peace. The problem is that the mindset here of Hamas and Hamas followers is such that they have always wanted to destroy Israel, that they wanted to rule the entire area as Palestine. And so that is a hard mindset to overcome. But if Hamas plans to exist, they need to lay down their weapons to do so. And if they don't lay down their weapons, then I don't see this peace plan becoming a long-term peace plan.
What sort of role do you think sectarian violence will play in this? There is even in Gaza some intra-Palestinian sectarian division that hasn't really been discussed throughout the course of this now negotiation, but also throughout the course of the war, that the Arab states or the Muslim nations are all on the same side here fully. Sectarian violence has been responsible for thousands, I think dare say millions of deaths in the region. How will that affect possible peace here?
So Hamas was the controlling force in this area. As Hamas loses control of the area like that, especially if they lay down their weapons, sectarian violence then may become the primary problem. That's why there needs to be some type of security force within the Gaza Strip to protect the area from sectarian violence or potential Hamas members who do not agree to lay down their weapons. But it will be a potential problem. You've seen UN peacekeeping forces trying to separate different sectarian forces from being engaged in violence, and usually that has been somewhat ineffective in different countries. So we will see this international security force, the ISF, that is foreseen inside the 20-point plan. If they are, if they actually form up, because it's supposed to be international, and no one else has agreed to put any forces in there so far, and two, if they do form up, whether or not they will be able to address sectarian violence.
Yeah, obviously, what Hamas did on October 7th is heinous, reprehensible. It represented an act of terrorism. It was disgusting. Hamas is a terrorist organization, but we can't forget that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was called before the International Criminal Court, an arrest warrant issued for him back in 2024 for alleged war crimes. And we've seen reporting coming out on the prior to this agreement, possible starvation within the Gaza Strip, children being killed en masse, and certainly a number of civilians. And we've had independent reporters, who have, at least on the borders, tried to tell some of these stories, and then doctors who have gone into the region who've reported what they've seen. So what happens there? Benjamin Netanyahu was a part of these negotiations. Hamas and Israel came together to come to a conclusion here. But on the Israeli side, do you see Benjamin Netanyahu at any point being held accountable for what people have defined as war crimes?
So it's hard to separate the politics from the reality in this area on this particular issue. That much of this is based upon the politics of different countries backing the Palestinians as opposed to Israel, and so whether or not these type of charges will stand, in actuality, the ICC has no effect on countries that have their own political and judicial system that is able to do investigations. And so in reality, they can't arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu because Israel has a functioning judicial system. But as I say, that many of these charges are just political charges trying to force the outcome of this conflict in the Gaza Strip. And I think that if peace is achieved, that a lot of this will go away.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Let's also talk about the connection to Iran. There was, prior to this peace deal, conversations between the Trump administration and Iran to come up with some sort of nuclear deal and to push for the denuclearization of Iran fully, and then obviously these strikes on nuclear facilities in Iran. How are those talks going to be concluded in the wake of these ongoing negotiations, which will inevitably include Iran's role in the sponsor of terrorism, which can fuel continuing conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Well, I think the United States has attempted to separate those two issues. The nuclear
But is that
weapon,
possible, Ken? Is that possible?
That's a good question. As I say, the United States has attempted to separate the two. Whether it is actually possible or not, I don't know. But nonetheless, the efforts have been made to try to deal with the threat of a nuclear Iran, attempts to try to stop their progress towards a nuclear weapon. Ended up resulting in the United States carrying out a bombing campaign on some of their sites to ensure that they were not able to continue their steps towards achieving a nuclear weapon. Whether their nuclear weapon production capabilities has been totally stopped is not clear. The United States has offered to provide access to civilian nuclear technology, if that is what they're actually trying to achieve, as opposed to a weapon. But Iran wants to be a nuclear power so that nobody can try to stop Iran from doing what it wants to do. And so I don't think it's possible to stop Iran from continuing to want to achieve that. And that's why they had to come down and actually try to bomb the sites out of existence so that they could not achieve nuclear weapons. But I don't know if they can achieve the separation of that from the role in running this proxy network against Israel. Israel continues to be a thorn in the side of the Middle East by the part of some of the countries there that want to totally do away with Israel. And Iran is one of those countries.
All right, I got to leave it there. Thank you so much, Ken Gray. We appreciate your insights, and we hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and we wish all of you out there a wonderful rest of your Sunday. See you at 4:30 next week.
Thank you.